good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
What's up, everyone? My name is Dennis Miralda. You are joining me and Chase Tolleson on the Building Men Podcast. Building Men is geared toward helping men become the strongest version of themselves mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So I found the gentleman I'll be talking to today, Chase Tolleson. I was actually listening to the Alpha Hippie Podcast, who, as you know, if you're listening along, Angelo Cisco was on my podcast recently. And I was listening to Angelo interview Chase. And so Chase he's the creator of the Primal Man Pathway program. He does a podcast called Primal Pathways?
Primal Pathway Show.
Primal Pathway Show. He's a human optimization coach. He's a magician of words. And listening to Chase and Angelo talk, Chase's voice can fucking beat any other voice up that I've ever heard. You sound like it's like the Dirty Harry voice. I'm listening to it this morning. I'm driving with my son. I'm like, Dan, listen to this guy's voice. He's like, Dad, his voice is way tougher than your voice. I'm like, I fucking know, man. Unbelievable. So welcome aboard, Chase. I'm happy you could join us today on the Building Men Podcast, my man.
Dennis, dude, I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for pumping me up there to start. I'm jacked. Let's go.
Well, people follow along on your Instagram, and we'll share, your Instagram at the end. You're jacked enough already. You don't need any more jacked up in your life. So, Chase, tell us a little bit about. I'm really interested people's journeys. I mean, to me, Building Men, what it's really about, that I've recognized over the last year or so, is I'm fascinated with people that go through a spot in their life where they're challenged, or they're tormented, or they kind of look at themselves in the mirror and they're like, who am I? What am I about? And they have to pick themselves up or kind of go in a different direction. So what I'm curious about is, tell us a little bit about where you started, and did you ever have this moment that you were like, I need to figure out what my life is going to be about in the future? So maybe kind of weave us to a path of how you found that spot and then how you prevailed from it. Big question. I know it's a big starter.
I'd love to. And I'll paint the picture. And before I go into, I'll lay it with, that is an ever-present question in my mind. The hero's journey is a cycle. Yeah. You got to spin it around and around. That being said, we'll start at end of high school, little to no direction, and stuck around town, tried doing community college. I had a whopping GPA of 0.742.
That sounds like Animal House. I was like one of the guys in Animal House that Dean Wormer was talking to, 0.0.
Yep. That was me. Most of my buddies stuck around town too. And I remember one time in particular, I was sitting in algebra class, teacher walks in, and I get a text from my buddy at the time. It's like, hey, I'm outside with a blunt rolled up. I'm like, oh, I'm skipping class.
Yeah.
So those were my priorities. When I was 21, or when I was about 20, I realized I needed to do something with myself. So started talking with different branches of the military. And it started with the Air Force. I wanted to be Spec War. I was 20 years old, fit, full of testosterone, wanted to go do cool shit. So I started talking with the Air Force. They said, you could be a combat controller. Sign this piece of paper that says you'll go in without a job. And, oh, don't worry, you'll get there. Got out of that contract, talked with the Army. No, you can't be a Ranger. You have marijuana possession on your record. Walk across the hall to the Navy. Yeah, you could be a SEAL. You got to pay out of pocket to go fix your eyes, and we'll waive your arrest, unlike everybody else. Oh, I got some thinking to do. Huh. My second cousin at the time is working missile defense at the Pentagon. My mom's cousin, like rubbing elbows with admirals. He's retired Air Force, and he hears I want to go special warfare. And he sends me the book Lone Survivor, which by now been made into a movie. For anyone that needs a fill-in, it's the story of a small 4-man SEAL team mission gone wrong and the lone survivor in his story. This book was meant to dissuade me. I read it in 72 hours and put the Camaro up for sale that I said I was going to have until I was 40. That car funded LASIK, and I spent the next year running, swimming, push-ups, pull-ups. I was ready. Like I passed guys underwater during my 500-meter swim to test for the SEAL contract. And this contract just guarantees you a chance. Then you get to buds, there could still be a 70% chance that you don't make it. I go to MEPS to contract in, and they say, sorry, new instruction was sent out 6 days ago. Your arrest is no longer waiverable. So some back and forth with my cousin. He hands my package to an admiral, the deputy chief of naval personnel. And he goes, sorry, don't believe him. Can't help him. Of course, my story was one that the recruiters told me to write. So at this point, I'm full victim mentality. Like, world is out to get me. What the hell? Just spent this whole last year. I'm like, whatever. And this whole time I've been running away from turning wrenches with the military. And I tell the Navy, get me out of town as fast as possible. And in 2010, fast was like 2 or 3 months. You leave in 8 days, you're an engineman. So I got thrust into this working in a minesweeper, small command, 80 men total. And I ended up in charge of the auxiliary engine room at 23, 24 years old with a broken leadership structure. I'm like, all right, I'm getting out. I want to be in charge of me. And I knew I liked fitness. I've been doing CrossFit since 2008. CrossFit gyms were a low barrier to entry, which there's a whole rabbit hole about that double-edged sword. So I got my CrossFit level 1, started coaching people. Whole story. Get out of the Navy 2014 and open a gym. And that's one revolution. The next one, to bring it full circle to where we are today, is I was running that gym. And I told myself a story when I got out of the Navy that I just want to run a gym. I can be the broke gym owner. But I'm going to find a girl with tattoos who likes fitness and lock it down. And I said that, and I told my brother this, and my aha moment, and I only realized this after I learned the power of words and what they can do for us. My brother gave a best man speech at my wedding that people with white hair said was the best man speech they've ever heard. And he said something along the lines of, if seeing Chase hold a relationship and be in love was like seeing a unicorn, then seeing Chase get married is like seeing Abe Lincoln riding a unicorn jumping over a rainbow. And I'll give it to him. He said it when he got out of the Navy. He was going to find a girl that's into fitness with tattoos and lock it down. And he did. And I was like, well, man, I created my own reality. Why am I still struggling to run a gym with, because I told myself I'd be the broke gym owner. And in the last couple of years, there's been an awakening of the awareness around words and identity and the story that runs through our head, and whether we run away from it or lean into it and reshape it. So to bring it full circle to where we are now, that awareness and realizing that I have been using the story of the Navy not letting me get a SEAL contract to hold me back. Like, I tried and everything was predetermined. That's now one of my biggest wins, because I went from a kid who had a 13-minute mile to running 2 miles in 13 minutes with a backpack on, swimming 2,000 meters, running home at the same pace, and then working out for another hour.
There's so much there, and the idea of magician of words, even the way that you're able to weave that story, what you did was, if anyone's listening right now, there's so many things that people are like, oh my, this human being is fascinating right now with everything that you've been through in such a short period of time. So I'll start with your decision first to go into the military. I'm interested in rites of passage. So think about it. We probably had our rites of passage as we were growing up. So I'm 44 years old, and I think back to my own experience when did I learn what it meant to be a man? What were the things that happened in my journey that I understood what masculinity meant or what it meant to be a man? And I could pick out a couple, maybe having a beer with my old man and bullshitting with him and his friends, getting my driver's license. That was a rite of passage for me. But then I think too, what the generations are like now, and what are these rites of passage that young men have now? And I'm not quite sure there are any specific rites of passage. Just even with the driver's license, there's Uber now, and I hear kids saying, "Oh, I don't need to get my driver's license because you can just Uber here and there." And I'm like, having the freedom with your hands behind the wheel, especially you mentioned, driving a car that was like a badass muscle car. So I'm wondering what you believe as you're in an experience where you were, in an elite armed forces area where you had to make decisions and other people's lives were in your hands and based on what you were deciding. What do you think were rites of passage that you went through growing up to the point when you're in the Navy and now you're in this spot where you are, in charge of the safety and security of not only the group that you're with, but our country?
Great question. The rites of passage leading up to the Navy. Definitely growing up with my father and listening to his stories. And he came from, his parents were divorced early on. His dad was an airline pilot who lived in different states than him. And his mom had an enthusiasm for alcohol, we'll say. So he relied on himself and he built this sense of bravado. And I grew up thinking that I needed to be very, very tough. That, the old school alpha male, right? Be a Viking, rape, pillage, and plunder, and that's broken. And I hospitalized my father when I was 17 years old. And we'll use this as a rite of passage because it damn sure was. And it's a longer part of the story. July 4th, if I was 17, 2005, I believe, maybe 2006. I had some friends over. We were in the garage. My parents and their friends were in the backyard. My dad had some whiskey. He comes outside in the garage, sees me exhaling a whole bunch of smoke, kicks everybody out. And my dad had never hit me. Gets in my face, puts me up against the wall. I swing at him, didn't want to hit him. Long story short, I went to go around the back to get my mom because he was being belligerent, and he got back in my face, and he's like, I pushed him, and then he goes, "What'd I tell you? You don't push anyone in a fight." And I heard fight, and at this point, I'm 17, unaware of the strength that I've developed from lifting weights for the last couple of years and growing up as a man, and I'm still scared of my dad. And I swept him. I took him down the driveway and I started hitting him. Ended up with 32 stitches in his face, a broken nose, and 4 staples in the back of his head. You want to talk rite of passage? I locked my power away for so long. And credit to the man that you said, Angelo Cisco has a great analogy for this. We all have an animal. And my animal was dragging me through life at that point. And then I hospitalized my dad. And there was 1 or 2 other incidences. And those were when I was drinking, where I was belligerent with people I cared about in the next few years, that nope, I'm done. I'm done being that guy. And I caged my animal and I put it in the other room. And it's only when in the last few years, have unlocked that, and leashed it, and then unleashed and learned to dance with my animal. And I know the question was rites of passage before the Navy, and that event happened before the Navy, and it spun a tale that continues to unweave.
As you think back on that moment, and I have a similar experience, never coming to blows, but being face to face with my old man a couple different times where we almost went at it. And there was this part of me that you can't fight. I was like, you can't fight your father. You can't do that. But there was also a part of me, I don't want to back down to him either, because it was that challenge kind of thing that happened. So when you look back, how do you view that moment in your life when you think about the script of your life? You could look at that in a way where you became a man in your father's eyes, that you stood up to him, or was it a moment where you felt, I need to get in control of this inner animal that you have, because it could be dangerous. I just beat the shit out of my old man here. So how do you look back at that moment in your life? Is it with I don't know, is it with angst? Is it with a certain level of like pride? Is it with sorrow? How do you replay that in your mind?
Immediately after the fact, I was shook. For the first few years following after that, it was proof that I was powerful. And then it turned into, I'm dangerous. And looking back on it now, things being what they are and life being what it is, that's an integral piece of my story. And for the longest time, seeing the scars on my dad's face messed with my head. Like, now though, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. And as long as you move forward through things, and move forward through things, if you try to move forward past something, you're going to get tripped up trying to go around it. When you move forward through something, you dissect it and you learn who you are because of it. That can create a perspective where you can where you can reframe it from sorrow or guilt or shame. It's another lesson, and it's a piece of life.
What was your relationship like with your father after that event happened?
Awkward. Was it a week before we exchanged words? And you know what? I take it back. It was not the 4th of July. It was early June it was 4th of July. Because I'm remembering there was a Father's Day card, but it was one I got him beforehand. And when we finally did talk, he brought that up. So you got me that nice Father's Day card and wrote more in there, and then this happens. And it was strained. Our relationship was strained for a while. Like there were a couple instances while I was home on leave in the Navy and we were drunk, and it's nothing ever that came to blows, but hands on each other, and it has to be a conscious decision to move past something. People think just because they're not talking about something, or they're not focusing, or they're not talking about it, or they're hanging out with someone and pretending like things all right, that it's all good. Like, yeah, you put the lid on it, the water's still boiling. So
as men, I think a lot of us tend to do that when we're dealing with a difficult situation emotionally. Push it down, and all of a sudden it starts to boil, and then it's like shaking up a soda bottle. It can come out in a time or in a way that we don't want to have happen. So your relationship with your father was strained, but as you look back on your childhood, your growing up, what lessons did you learn from him about being a man? What were certain things that you're like, man, my dad taught me this about being a man? And it could be positive or negative. It could be like, I want to be this type of man because I saw my dad, and conversely, I don't want to be this kind of man because of what I saw from my dad.
I'm a fitness and self-development guru, right? My dad had a weight bench in his bedroom when I was 4 years old. I watched my dad lift weights growing up. And fitness was a thing. Uh, Being active was a thing. Like, and to any dads listening, like if you need a reason to start working on yourself, ask yourself where you want your kids to be when they're 35 years old. You know, I Lifetime Fitness is the local like big gym chain there, and to go upstairs and use the free weights, you have to be 12 years old. And I was running upstairs when I was on my 12th birthday. You know, so my dad introduced me to fitness. Like we lifted together throughout high school. You know, and we started CrossFit together in 2008. You know, I bought my Camaro when I was 16, and then when I was 17, he bought a Camaro too. And the reason I got a Camaro was because he told me stories about his 1970 Nova that was a 10.9 quarter mile car that could pull the wheels off the ground on the street. You know, so all that stuff, that taking care of yourself and finding hobbies you enjoy, and truly living in your truest essence, yeah, that comes from my dad, and I've whittled and reformed that message.
You mentioned about running up the steps in the gym when you're 12 years old. I can relate to that. I remember my father would take me to the gym at this around the same age, and I still remember that moment where I was able to go and lift weights. And to me, that was another rite of passage. It's this moment where you feel like you're accepted in your father's eyes. It's such a big thing for young men, where you feel like you're accepted in their world in a deeper way. You were on the podcast with Angelo Cisco, and you said your father's nickname was Chucky Tries.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up, I just got done reading the book Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, it's on my list. I have
It's
to read it.
well done. I mean, and the guy has, talk about people's voices. It's silky smooth. I mean, that guy's voice is tremendous. So I would recommend doing the audiobook. And he talks about his old man, and he got into a couple fights with his old man growing up. It's a really precarious upbringing he had in Texas. And he says to Matthew McConaughey's dad was saying, listen, son, he said, buys are for show, the tries are for the dough. That's where you make your money. Working men have those triceps, and so when I heard you talking about Chucky Tries, that was I made that immediate connection to McConaughey.
It's interesting you say that. As I've delved into becoming more and more of a hippie, if you will, with the messaging. My brother in a group text with our buddies. It's like, when are you going to start talking like Matthew McConaughey?
There you go. It's out there in the universe now.
Yeah, right.
And part of the premise of his book is this idea of, even when we think something is a red light or a yellow light in front of us, it's just waiting to turn green. And I'll use that as an analogy to your life situation. So now there's this moment that you have with your father, and you come to blows with your father, which is a traumatic experience. As an educator, I recognize that as kids growing up, we have these moments, adverse childhood experiences that manifest themselves. They bury down deep, and they come out at different points in our life. So you had this kind of rage building up, and it burst out in this situation. So at that moment, there's that red light in front of you, like, oh shit, like this just happened. My father's in the ER. He has all these stitches in his head. But what it might have done was been an opportunity for you to kind of check your mindset in a way where in the future, I don't want to have this happen again. I want to control that animal, that rage inside of me. I want it to come out when I can call on it in the appropriate situation. But that situation might have been one that caused you to rethink. You might not have even known it then, but as I talk to you now, it definitely played a major role in kind of developing the man that you are today, right?
Yes, very much so. I like that, the red light and green light analogy. That's well put, and I'll be ordering that book as soon as we get off this call now.
Absolutely. And now I want to take it back a little bit further into your career in education, because I'm such a student of people's experiences as they're going through elementary, middle, and high school. There's different events that happen along the way, positive and negative events that ultimately shape how we show up as men in the future. And it could be a relationship that we have with, our classmates, other students. It could be with, an educator, positive and or negative, or events that happen that really shaped who we are. So can you recall any events that you would say, man, this was something that happened in school that, as I look back on it now, it shaped the man that I am today?
That's it's tough to say a single event. Um, as far back as elementary school, I remember in second grade an instance where I was told I understand why note taking is important and that I was good at taking notes. Like, and then in third grade, I had a stack of unfinished homework. Like in that year somewhere, I decided, yeah, I'm good. And I got A's and B's on all my tests. I I got good enough grades to get through, and I learned all the material. And that through line carried like middle school, high school, even my stint at community college. I got told by an English professor, you can't get by on potential alone. Um, so specific events, it's with educators or anyone such as that, it's difficult to recall. Yeah.
So even looking back, I'll change the trajectory a
Yeah.
little bit of that idea. Knowing what you know now, everything that you've learned, especially in the last few years since you're going on this kind of awakening, this moment where you understand what you want to be, where you're saying, I'm putting all this stuff out there in the universe that I want to be able to accomplish, and knowing what you've learned during that period of time, if you can go back and change the way a school operates to help you become the person you are now, what could schools have done during your experience that would make school like it would have been this experience like, okay, I get it now, that's where I got to the point where I am right now?
What could schools have done? Different teaching styles for different learning styles. You know, I think there's in my opinion, a massive opportunity for recognizing unique talents and unique skills and pathways in which individuals learn, as opposed to painting in a box. Are you a Calvin and Hobbes fan?
Oh, I remember them. I loved Calvin and Hobbes.
So my dad got a new Calvin and Hobbes book every Christmas until there were no new ones for my mom to buy them. And I found this comic the other day, and it's Calvin. He goes, "Today, for show and tell, I've brought a tiny marvel of nature, a single snowflake. I think we might all learn a lesson from how utterly unique and exquisite this crystal, or how this utterly unique and exquisite crystal turns into an ordinary, boring molecule of water, just like every other one when you bring it into the classroom. And now, while the analogy sinks in, I'll be leaving you drips and go out outside."
It's classic.
Yeah. So that being said, I feel that school, there's no awareness around language in school. There's no awareness around here's these life events there's little awareness around. Here's these life events that we're going to need to tackle. It's basic skills and taught in the same way. And I understand there's logistics problems there, or logistics hiccups there. Like how do we determine who can be taught in which way? And we spend the time on the front end to figure that out. I think you're going to have a lot more kids at 18 that know they want to be entrepreneurs as opposed to force themselves through a 4-year degree because their parents think it's what they need.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. And it's one of those things where schools are set up in a way that you're kind of creating employees. We're creating employees that need to go through a system because that's what society is telling us that we need to do. So you mentioned it's almost like differentiating the level of instruction to meet whatever the needs are of that specific student. So your perfect situation, what did they miss for you? Like what did you need in school that would have been your perfect, would have been like the magic potion, would have been Abe Lincoln on the unicorn riding over the rainbow? What would that have been?
Good callback. Yeah, it's interesting. Have you read Mindset by Carol Dweck?
I haven't.
So the premise is the growth and fixed mindset. And there's been studies done that when you praise a kid for their intelligence, they are less likely to pursue difficulty or to want to do more work than a kid who is praised for their effort. And more awareness around that for educators early on. Who knows? Maybe soft talk on purpose. Maybe that could have been a tipping point for me. Hey, great work, great effort here, as opposed to, oh, you're really skilled, like you're really intelligent. Because then, well, why do I want to do this homework? One, you told me I'm smart. Why do I need to practice? Two, what happens if I do the homework and learn I'm not smart?
Yeah. I'll take it a step further. Just the whole idea of assigning a numeric value to effort, to me, is an antiquated idea. And while I understand what you're saying with praise, I often tell educators especially to tone down the praise that they're using in favor of asking questions about the effort. So to your point about effort, it's just, you teachers, instead of giving answers, you need to keep asking questions, because then the learning continues. If you hand something to me, hey, great job, Chase, way to go, you're done, it's done, you need to move on. Or if I say, tell me what about that you're most proud of, Chase, or tell me what was the most challenging part, I'm still validating what you did, I'm still acknowledging that work that you're doing, but the learning continues after that. And then maybe you want to go deeper, learn more about whatever the specific thing is. So I challenge teachers all the time, like, instead of giving praise, especially just blanket level false bullshit praise, keep asking questions. That's our job. And so now I'll bring it full circle to you working with people in that Primal Man Pathway. So you're constantly using your words, this magician of words, to challenge people to think on a deeper level. So walk me through what that looks like. So now I want to work with you. I'm listening to your podcast and I'm following along on your journey. I'm listening to you on Instagram, and you're using these motivational tactics to help me become better. What's your process like? So if I want to work with you, what does that look like for me as one of your clients or one of the people that is a disciple of your message?
First off, I want to say I 100% agree. There is a massive difference between all the right questions coaching or teaching and all the right answers coaching. It's night and day, and then some. That being said, I will always, the body, taking care of the physical, the meat suit that we're wearing, if you will always be paramount. Because whether you're into the woo-woo or you just want to feel good about yourself, like, we can go science side of it. The stress that we experience in life will be largely mitigated if our body is functioning well. And if you go like energy side of it, like, if you have pent up energy in your body, you're putting junk in it, you won't be able to find that like Zen, align your chakra kind of state. That being said, I ran a gym for I'm still running a gym. I've ran a gym for 7 years. And any coach, any fitness coach that is laying the base with habits, while well-intentioned, because that's the story that we've been taught, they're building a house with no foundation. So we work on the identity. We work on the stories inside of our head. And it sounds so, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't need to work on that. Cool. Let's spend an hour on the phone. Because I still have stuff I work on. And I've been deep in this work for a year now. To back it up, the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait wherein an individual considers themselves the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality requires a habitual thought process. And we all have a little bit of that inside of us. And when it comes to fitness, somebody who's 280 pounds and wants to be 215, and they say they've tried everything, well, something inside of them believes that they are just a 280-pound person and they're not worth the work that it'll take to get to 215. Somebody who has been stuck at a shit job for a payroll processor and they want to go back to something that they love, but they just can't find the way, they don't believe that they're worthy of making that jump. They don't think they can do it. And it goes back, I'm using, they don't think. They don't. So many people, while well-intentioned, will say, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be late. I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to hate my job. Cool. What are you focusing on then? You're focusing on being late, being overweight, hating your job. Let's talk about where we do want to go. So laying all that down, because in the Primal Man Pathway, that's what we work on. We work on the words we use. We dig into the language, and we go all the way back to sixth grade, being embarrassed that we got honor roll because we didn't think we deserved it. Or being 8 years old, getting hit by the ball and T-ball, and then being scared to take risk. Because you think it's just your daily schedule that's holding you back. You're spending 2 hours watching Netflix. It's not your schedule that's holding you back. It's these stories that you think you've moved past and that you have moved past. And you need to go back and wait in that, because you need to sit in the stuck before you can stand with your wins.
To me, it's such a profound realization once people can come to that point. One, understanding that there is shit in our past that's keeping us stuck, that's keeping us locked down because of the stories that we're telling ourselves what we are and what we are not. Once we can get to that point where we, one, recognize that those stories exist in our heads we're telling ourselves, and then two, recognizing that doesn't need to be the case. We have the ability to change the story in our mind, which is, our mind is such an amazing thing. I'm reading the book You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Yeah. You brought up Lone Survivor. So Goggins tells a story about Marcus Luttrell. And it was just kind of a tongue-in-cheek story. He has a twin brother, Morgan. Mm-hmm. And Marcus is now going through buds. And one day he decides his twin brother comes in and his brother goes through the day for him. No one realizes it at the time. But Morgan goes through Marcus's day and does all the shit that he had to do. And years after, they realized it was him that went through it, and they're like, "We're gonna fucking get you now." But it's the same guy. I'm listening to the audiobook of it. It's an amazing thing. They do the author is basically, talks through it in the audiobook, and then he interviews Goggins afterwards. So it's more of a podcast kind of thing, and it's amazing hearing Goggins' story. But the reason I connected with that was because he says we are so much more capable than what we give ourselves credit for. He says we only are basically using about 40% of our capability. When we think we're done, we still have so much more to give because of those stories that we're telling ourselves of what we are or we're not capable of. So with that being said, tell me a situation, or maybe it could be, either your experience, in high school playing sports, it could be in the Navy, it could be as a coach, it could be, running the CrossFit gym, where you felt that maybe you weren't able to go any further, but you found that like extra gear, you found that whatever it is, that, testicular fortitude that you're like, I'm going to pick my shit up and I'm going to keep moving. Can you recall a moment like that in your life?
Yes. And we are capable of exactly what we give ourselves credit for. Because until you give yourself credit, that'll be all you're capable of.
Good point.
That being said, I like reframing guys that have gotten published and authors. That being said, 2020 is a brick and mortar fitness facility owner. Like, we were thin on cash flow going into COVID, and then we bled, and then we came out the other side, and it was this decision of, do we keep running the same model and continuing to just barely make it, or flip it? So we went from standard CrossFit to highly individualized group sessions. And we stuck ourselves in the femur so we could live. Like we cut an artery and we bled even more so we could rebuild. And we're doing it. Like a year later, and we were at one of our staff meetings last month, and one of the guys, he's like, we're doing weekly wins. And he's like, I had a Facebook memory come up from a year ago going into the shutdown. And we did it. And yeah, so you talk about a spot where it would have been very easy to close up shop and say, well, I'm going online, or we're going to live off my wife's income and I'll figure it out. We're still figuring it out every day. And compared to last year, we figured it out 10 times over.
Yep. It's one of the great things in life when you have an opportunity to take a step back, look at things from a different perspective, and understand that just because that was your thought process, your mindset a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever, that doesn't mean that you're stuck in that fixed space. Your comment about having that growth mindset, it's such an enormous part, especially over the last year. You know, people really need to understand and reinvent themselves. You did a podcast recently on the Primal Pathway Podcast. Basically, one of your episodes was called "Let Go to Gain Control," and so I listened to that this morning, and then it hit me that premise. So, can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that? When you need to let go to gain control of your life, how do you frame that for people?
Great question. A lot of people, the majority of us, at some point or another, are white knuckling our way through life. And our breath is trapped in our chest, and we're living in an upregulated state in this fight, flight, or freeze. And more often than not, it's freeze. And we're paralyzed by inaction. And then inaction creates overwhelm. And then the overwhelm creates more inaction. There's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's because in nature, we save our fight, flight, or freeze for when there's a lion chasing us, not for when someone cut us off in traffic.
Right.
And so in letting go to gain control, it's not negation fully acknowledged. It's not sit on your couch and watch Netflix and stuff will come to you. It's let go of all those stories run around in your head and the stress that you are creating for yourself. Like everything in your life, you either choose or you tolerate. And if you tolerate it, then you're choosing it. So once you can wrap yourself around that, then you can let go of that fight, flight, or freeze. You can breathe low and slow in your stomach and create clarity around how to create control. And, you know, for anybody out there listening, a fun little, you know, we've talked about the stories in our head, and try this. Whatever stories are around your head, whatever you're stressed about, or whatever you think is holding you back, something absolutely horrible that happened today, write it down. Then after you write it down, read it out loud. And then after you read it out loud slower while you're breathing deep. And then see if that story is really still that bad. Because that's letting go to gain control. You let go of the stuff that you think is running the reins.
I've gone through that process a couple times during the course of this year. My girlfriend is so big into that idea of like really thinking through the stories that we're telling ourselves and the shit that's really bogging us down. So we've done that with other people as well, where we'll write stuff down, we'll think about it, like fully experience whatever it is that's getting in our way, that's blocking us up, fully think about it, experience it, and then we fucking burn it, put it in the fire. And that now that is, it's a ceremonial moment that is now not holding us back anymore. And it's something that I've spoken about on the podcast before. And it for me, it has certainly worked. It's something that it has this rite of passage away from that thing that's holding us back. This journey that I've been on in the past 12 months or so, Chase, what I've tried to do is one, understand masculinity on a deeper level, what that means. What does masculinity mean? And, the dictionary is masculinity are traits that are associated with being male or being a man. And that's what the fuck does that mean? So that's one journey I've gone on. The second journey has been this, intellectual journey, spiritual journey, where I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can through listening to podcasts, to reading books, to just consuming as much as I can. And so I feel like I'm on this journey, and every time that something rubs up against me or bristles up against me, I want to learn more about it. This cognitive dissonance that happens in my head. So I've said on this podcast more than one time that you are kind of the sum of the 5 people that you hang around with the most, or that you associate with the most. And so I've said that. I've kind of gone on record saying that. I've heard it before. Tell me why that was bullshit. Why was I wrong when I said that, Chase?
Yeah, and I'll go on record saying I used this for almost 33 years of my life. This is a recent reframe for me. That being said, it's an absolute and total projection. We're handing our responsibility for who we are off to our circle of friends. We're saying, well, I'm a reflection of my circle. I'm a reflection of my coworkers. I'm a reflection of, my family. Bullshit. They are a reflection of you. Everybody around you is a reflection of the choices you've made, the values you hold, and the habits you practice. You are not, you can choose to keep saying it if you want to hand your power off to them. Cool. I mean, give them your energy. It'll probably just pump them up more. You are not a direct reflection of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. The 5 people with whom you spend the most time are a direct reflection of the choices you've made.
That's it. You put that up on Instagram. I commented on it right away, and I said, it made me rethink. And I love when stuff makes its way into my brain, and I have to challenge what I previously thought, because that's where growth happens. It's like in the gym. If you're doing something, if you do the same exact thing every single day, you'll get to a point where, maybe you're fitting in a way, but to get better, you need to change it up. You need to push yourself further than you thought you can go. You need to do something a little bit different. And to me, that's the same thing that happens mentally. So I appreciate you putting that out there, because it definitely helped me reframe my idea. And you're totally right. It's about those choices, those habits you're doing on a daily basis that will determine your future. So with that being said, too, tell us about what are things that you're doing on a regular basis. So what are your daily habits? I don't want to say the word routine. Routine, to me, it has a negative connotation. I want it to be like, just what is your lifestyle like that sets you up for success?
I like to use the word rhythm. And people are it's really complicated, guys. Get ready. I wake up and I drink water. I work out in the morning. I go for a long walk with my dogs. And then I do the pieces of work that will affect the most change in my business. I separate work from home, and I'm present with my wife. I work out 4 days a week. I walk 3+ miles a day, and I sleep 7 hours a night. I practice what I preach when it comes to journaling and mindset and working through stories. And I breathe deep down into my belly. And any asshole can overcomplicate something. Eat real food. That's the piece I left out. I'm sorry, there is more. Eat more protein, chew your vegetables, and realize when you're full. Like, it really is the simple stuff that works. And I've been around fitness for my whole life. And I was first certified as a personal trainer in 2009. Like, I've seen all the hacks and I've tried most of them. And yeah, I have some supplements I take. I'm not going to list them, because until you're eating single ingredient foods, and, like, I take some cool vitamin C supplements and stuff that tastes really good because it's super bioavailable. Like, it's not going to help you at all if you're still going to McDonald's 5 days a week.
To the men that you work with on a regular basis, if there was a way to kind of categorize the things that you're seeing consistently that are getting in our way as men, that are kind of getting us stuck or preventing us from being that primal man that we know we can be, what would you say are a couple things that you see are consistently getting in men's way?
Their lack of self-worth has them handing their schedule and responsibilities off to external circumstances. And that is why so many men that I've worked with have tried in the past to implement a fitness routine or a mindfulness practice or fix their relationship and fallen off. And it comes back to, the gym can be an addiction. It can be a place to run away as much as the bar is. And until we fix the stories in our head, you're still going to use the barbell the same way you would use a bottle of tequila. So the guys come into the program with surface level. I want to be more confident. I want to lose 15 pounds. My back hurts. What's there underneath is I don't feel like a man because I'm unable to talk to the girl that I have feelings for. I don't feel like a man because I'm too scared to ask for what I want professionally. Fitness is by and large a Band-Aid. And then from there, guys who thought they needed to work out 5 days a week are like, hey, I want to work out 3 days a week so I have more time to go do the stuff that brings fulfillment to me.
And such an important point, because while people see aesthetically, you look a certain way, you're jacked, you have this, but here's the thing. If you're basing your value or your worth on benching 315, deadlifting 475 and squatting whatever, you're not going to be able to maintain that throughout the course of your life. You're going to get injured at some point. You're going to get into your 60s, and all of a sudden, if you're basing your masculinity and your manhood and your worth on a number or on being able to do a certain number of reps, and that goes away, and your value placed on masculinity is in something like that, then where are we? What are we left with? So while you're using fitness and that, physical exertion, which I'm all about, you're also saying you need to do the deep work. You need to do that inward work, because that's where it comes from. It has to come from inside. That's not going to be taken away. It doesn't matter if you can't run a 6.5 minute mile. You know your worth because it comes from inside of your heart and inside of your head, not how fast you can run or how much you can lift.
Yes, exactly. And then your movement practice can be something that serves you as opposed to controlling you. People think they want to be fit. Most people just want to feel how they think fit people feel.
Or they want to feel that other people are looking at them like they want to be looked at. So again, that idea of giving up your power to the way that you think someone else thinks about you. It's that broken looking glass self.
Yeah.
People that I speak to, that's one of the main things. And I think your assessment of where men get stuck, that's across the board. I'm seeing the same exact thing, that people are so worried about what other people think. And I'm a recovering seeker of approval. That was, I spent a lot of time in quicksand over the years of my life worrying about what other people thought. And once you're able to shed that shit and not be concerned about that, do what's right, do the best that you can do based on your knowledge. And if you know better, then do better, but don't base it on other people's opinions and thoughts of you. I certainly know why the idea of magician of words, that resonated with me. That's going to be part of the title of this podcast. And when I promote it, that'll be in there, because the way that you speak got me thinking in so many different directions. I want to schedule another interview for you in like September, October, because I need to level up to be able to, have a word, chess match back and forth, because you've got me thinking in so many different ways, Chase. I really appreciate the way that you're able to communicate on such an intellectual and spiritual level. It got me thinking in a million different directions. So I wanted to just tell you, I appreciate that a lot.
I appreciate you, brother. I thoroughly enjoy this conversation. And the system that unlocked this and gave me the key to unlock it for myself, and lifted. I can, by all means, if you are interested in words and the power of abracadabra, I can make the introduction. It is pure magic. Do you know what abracadabra, where it comes from?
I just know. I mean, I know that like a magician would have a wand and they would say it, and a rabbit would come out of a hat. That's all I know. So tell me about it.
It comes from the ancient Aramaic for "with my word I create."
It's like
You know what?
Like an alchemist.
Yeah. You know what the Merriam-Webster definition of a spell is? A word or a combination of words thought to hold great power. So every time we speak, we're all casting spells. And when you go through life with conflict victim language, I don't want to do this, maybe I'll do that, someone's fault for situation I'm in, you're casting spells. And you can either live in that black magic state where everything feels like crap, or we can flip it around, take control of our stories, switch our words up, and cast white magic.
So you believe in that so much that the tattoo that you have on your back is abracadabra.
Yes, it is the Aramaic triangle of abracadabra.
I'll make sure that one of the pictures that I post as far as the promo goes, that's visible to people, because before we even started, I had no idea what that tattoo was, but it's a striking tattoo, and it's something that the fact that it resonates so deeply with you in your core of who you are, to memorialize it in that way, it's a really striking tattoo. So I'll make sure the people that are listening will have an opportunity to check that out on Instagram. So Chase, tell us how people that are listening to the Building Men podcast can find out more about you, can get in touch with you, can reach out to you.
Yeah, Dennis, definitely. Easiest way to find me right now is on Instagram at Coach_Chase_Tolleson. That's where I'm living and breathing right now. I'm on Facebook too, Chase Tolleson. There's more of my fun stuff, like the 5 people you spend most time with, on Instagram, because I put that out on the lives. Yeah, I like Instagram. You'll see me on TikTok soon. I'm gonna make some thirst trap videos to pull people in.
Yeah, that's where the world is going right now. It's unbelievable how much traction you get through TikTok, and you can do a TikTok and then post it to your Instagram. Like I mentioned before, my brother I told him, you're going to be in charge of TikTok. I'm not there yet, so he's going to post stuff on Instagram through what he's doing on TikTok. But yeah,
Nice.
it's interesting because I'm against just, constantly being on social media, but I understand it's the way to get your reach out there, especially when you have such a positive message. You have to be able to spend time doing that, understanding that it has a ripple effect. So you spend a couple of minutes doing it, as long as you're not scrolling through mindlessly, where you could be doing something positive for yourself or something to serve another human being in the world. So I just wanted to just thank you, Chase. The last hour to me was probably one of my favorite hours that I've done on this show. I've learned a ton, and I think the audience that's listening will gain a lot out of the last hour. And I'll definitely reach out to you to have you on again in the future. To reach out to me, the best way for me as well is on Instagram. It's building.men. On Facebook, it's Building Men Podcast. My email address is buildingmencoach@gmail.com. We just started a YouTube channel, so all the interviews that I'm doing, all the stuff on Building Men, will be up on YouTube as well. Go a step further than you thought you can go today. Chase Tolleson, thank you so much, brother, for being on. I truly appreciate you. We'll see you next time on Building Men, and I'll leave you with a little abracadabra. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, brother.
I'll stop recording. Yo, man.